Noble Lords, may I thank the noble Baroness Noakes, for her determined and timely action in flagging up the wording in this bill. And may I thank the Minister himself for his sensitive and careful acceptance of the comments that several of us brought to his attention on the use of the word person as opposed to female. Indeed, as others have noted prolifically in this important debate, the drafting of the bill has eliminated females from the very act that only a female can carry out. As a former Member of Parliament and member of the European Parliament and of the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, I have fought all of my political life to bring females into all aspects of politics and into all circles of political power and responsibility at all levels of society. And as a former director of the world's largest children's charity, as a senior consultant to another 6 or 7 of the world's largest NGOs serving children, and as a former World Health Organization ambassador, I know well that the child to be trafficked, abused, enslaved, or sold is the one who has been successfully detached from its mother. And this detachment in this bill begins before conception. The knowledge that both before and after birth a mother is needed for the fetus to be safely developed in the womb and securely delivered with a safe birth underpins the Children's Act and all child's rights enshrined in the United Nations Convention for the Rights of the Child, both of which were framed in intensively discussed, debated and agreed by our former late and much lamented loved colleague Baroness Faithfull, whose work for children seemed eternally enshrined in British law. This bill betrays her heritage as much as it betrays the heritage of Professor Bowlby with his attachment theatre for babies and children throughout their beginnings. Indeed, it is, of course, something that the British government, successive British governments, have always known about and supported. If I look at the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, signed in 1976 and ratified by the UK in the same year, Article 10, the states parties of the present covenant recognise that the widest possible protection and assistance should be accorded to the family, which is the natural and fundamental group unit of society. That comes out of the European Convention for Human Rights, of course, particularly for its establishment, and while it's responsible for the care and education of dependent children, marriage must be entered into with the free consent of the intending spouses. Special protection should be accorded to mothers during a reasonable period before and after childbirth. And indeed, the government is right to put this bill forward, because this Article 10 goes on to say, during such period, working mothers should be accorded paid leave with adequate social security benefits. Nothing could be more suitable than that. However, we also have CEDAW, ratified by the UK in 1986, to provide special protection to women during pregnancy in types of work proved to be harmful for them, and so on. It will ensure that women have appropriate services in connection with pregnancy, confinement, and the postnatal period, granting free services wherever necessary, as well as adequate nutrition during pregnancy and lactation. Nothing could be more appropriate for this bill, which our government has correctly put forward, save that both those great statements I have read out mention women, mothers, females, not person. Person in the dictionary means man, woman, or child. We are talking today about a female activity. Indeed, I find it astounding that 500,000 years of human knowledge, custom, and practice is cast aside for the sake of today's unwillingness to recognize reality, for us to discard mother, female, woman, in favor of a mythical being, the neutral person, the very neutrality of the word, negating females. For those successfully impregnated by males for conception are females. Maternity is not a male activity, nor can it be hijacked by a change of wording. And while wishful at all times of supporting mothers at any stage of their responsibilities, I cannot sit silent while we wipe the female out of a piece of maternity legislation which is designed for her. Now, of course, we want our laws to be understandable to the ordinary person. That means everyone who votes and those who are not yet old enough to vote. And one of our most beautiful, wonderful authors is, of course, Shakespeare. He has a lot to say about motherhood and mothering. He refers to breastfeeding several times, for example, in Romeo and Juliet, in Macbeth, The Winter's Tale. He presents the heavily pregnant Queen Hermione in The Winter's Tale. Queen Thaisa vividly gives birth to a princess during a storm at sea in Pericles. Let me just give you an example from Shakespeare of what happens when you lose the word mother or female and you replace it with person. It makes a very interesting distinction. I give you, for example, "Thou art thy mother's glass." This is from Sonnet 3. "Thou art thy mother's glass, and she in thee calls back the lovely April of her prime." Now let me use the wording of this bill. "Thou art thy person's glass, and it in thee calls back." Well, what can it call back, colleagues? It cannot be the lovely April of its prime. I would suggest that what we could only offer then is it calls back the flat and gloomy February of our time. And if the minister is unable, despite his kind words, to offer any real sweetness to salve our strong concerns, would he in turn be willing to accept a full debate on language used in legislative drafting and language used in other governmental organisations and institutions, and in those which are sustained by funding from the government with use in schools, for example? The concerns of today in this House on language cannot be easily ameliorated, as the present debate so clearly shows. I deeply and I profoundly regret the drafting and the misgendering of women in this bill.
I now call Lord Young of North